Good morning. Thank you all for coming this morning and braving the inclement weather. My name is Brandon Barkus, and I am the lead attorney for the Citizens for the Preservation of Bessie Heights Marsh. We're here today to talk to you about an illegal barge fleeting that is going on right now on our public waters in the Neches River, and we need it to stop immediately. What we have here is we have obtained some reports from the General Land Office, who on June 22nd of this year went out and conducted a site inspection of this illegal operation and noted a lot of damage that had occurred during this illegal operation to the marsh itself, to the land abutting the marsh, and as you can see, the extensive photos that they've documented to where this operation has to stop. That at the time they had told the General Land Office that we're going to stay 30 feet away, but you can tell by these pictures here that that's absolutely not the case. We've heard that there's spud barges that they've created to hold these barges in place, break constantly, and they've got to figure out a better solution, and that solution is to leave immediately while you're conducting an illegal operation until you can do it right and do it somewhere else that's not going to affect the precious ecosystem of the Bessie Heights Marsh, which we all love and enjoy and have used for centuries to hunt and fish and enjoy the nature that we so wish to preserve. We've also heard that for the last several months, there hasn't even been a security officer out there to provide security for the cargo that it's carrying, which is a lot of oil components, to where if a spill did occur, it would devastate the marsh and the 20 or so millions of dollars that we've put in to preserve the marsh over the years. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I'd like to introduce to you not only a leader in our community, but also a leader that has never wavered on this issue. Back in June, Commissioner Crump and the Commissioner's Court passed a resolution which provided that Savage Inland Marine was operating and they should immediately leave. Without further ado, Commissioner, Precinct Number 4 of Orange County, Jody Crump.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. And good morning to everyone here. And as Brandon said, I echo that about the bad weather. Apologize about that. But there's some friends here and there's some familiar faces here, and I appreciate you being here this morning. As Brandon said, we want to just bring awareness to some of these situations that are going on out there. And what it really is as Brandon referred to, is this is a non-permitted operation that's being conducted now. The General Land Office hasn't moved forward with that situation. They've left it that way. And we have some issues because there's about $20 million invested in the Bessie Heights Marsh as far as restoration. Parks and Wildlife, they said since the 1900s, they've lost about 6,000 acres of that property out there that's just sort of gone away. So there's been a lot of restoration work that direction for hurricane mitigation. Things like that have caused a lot of damage. We understand, and we're in an unenviable position of saying we are not anti-business in Orange County. We like the business, we love the business, we love people to come here, and we try to offer things to them to kind of stimulate that, up to and including the county. We've issued a lot of tax abatements to many, many companies coming into the county to sort of stimulate some of that growth and that business to come in here. But with that being said, there's things that we need to do and things that we don't need to do. And actually having gone out on site and actually looked at some of the area out there before and have actually witnessed the damage that's occurred out there on that property, it is concerning. So what we would like is, as Brendan had said, with the position of it not being permitted currently, we would like for them to actually move their facility away, just take it away, go through the process, the actual real process. Let's find out if it's legal to be there. If it's not legal to be there, I still don't advocate being in that oxbow, period. It's got a nexus, a significant nexus into the Bessie Heights Marsh, and that just concerns me. So I had suggested to move to the oxbow to the north or anywhere else around that area that could be used as a fleeting area. There will be some situations involved, some possible dredging, some things like that. Don't even know if they can do that through the Corps, but as it stands now, the facts of the matter are this. That is not a permitted facility. It was taken over by another company, I understand that. But State Senator Robert Nichols' office, State Representative Dave Phelan's office, and Orange County Commissioner's Court have all issued letters of opposition to that fleet facility being conducted in that area as it currently stands today. Those letters that have been issued are still in full force and effect, and we would just like for those individuals to start engaging back in, and let's start moving forward with this process. Let's go ahead and ask some questions. Let's go ahead and get some things out on the table. We are not anti-business. We'd love for you to come here, but we just need it done in a more safe environment and in another location. So I'm sure there's lots of questions that can be asked. So instead of going into a long, drawn-out dissertation about things, I think I'd entertain any type of questions that people have and let that stimulate some conversation. The site visit by the GLO was done in June. I think the acquisition was finalized in May. Okay. That the current company finalized that acquisition in May. This was in June. So the time frame, and I believe the site visit was stimulated when Commissioner's Court issued a letter of opposition. I think that finally put it on a radar. So because the previous attempt to go ahead and permit that facility, it had never even appeared in Orange County. The public comment section meetings were done in Jefferson County, and when it actually came to Orange County that we became aware of what was going on, the public comment period was already closed. We couldn't even make public comment. So I think it started the ball rolling and got it going, and we're actually grateful that it did. So it's given us some more information that we didn't have. $20 million of federal, state, and local funding going into that facility. The March flooding event that we had, lots and lots and lots of damage. My precinct runs, immediately adjacent to the river, the Sabine River. Same thing. They had a lot of flooding in there. Then that's effectively it was attributed to that watershed of Bessie Heights and those lower marsh areas down through that area as to what helped mitigate some of those flood problems. It absorbed as it started fanning out through that alluvial plain and that flood, that marsh area. That helped some of that elevation. That elevation would have been higher if the marsh wasn't there. So it's what we're concerned about. If that starts to be damaged, if it starts to go away, if it starts being taken over, it's some issues that need to be addressed. And the amount of money that was spent out there. I think this year, there's another $1 million attributed to the Bessie Heights Marsh that this year they're going to spend another $1 million in it. So I think that number keeps climbing every year. They have been driven up all along the bank. I've been out on site, and even the GLO report that was issued in June when they did that, even the GLO report reflects that they were within 8 foot of the bank, and the river's only about 1 foot to 2 foot deep. So they're actually driving them onto the floor of the oxbow, and some of those barges, I do still believe those barges are being driven up on the bank. I have not been back out there. I have not witnessed that, but when I went out there originally in June, they were out there, and they were within the 30 foot then. And that was under the new company that had taken over. So that my position would be that if Savage Marine is coming in and taking over, and that's great. I'm glad they are. They've got an impeccable record of safety, but if they're coming in and taking over, be diligent, do the right thing, and go ahead and move their facility out until it gets permitted. Once it's permitted, if you get it permitted, that's great. We'll have to deal with what happens. But in the meantime, if it's a, quote, illegal fleeting operation or a non-permitted operation, they need to be proactive. The potential is there. I've had conversation with some of the companies involved and asked about, is a probability of a hull breach or a toluene or a benzene spill or whatever it may be in those barges? I said, is it a probability that one of those barges would leak, get involved in an accident? And I completely concur and say it's not necessarily a probability, but it's a possibility. And anytime it's a possibility, Murphy's Law, if anything can happen and go wrong, it's going to go wrong at the wrong time. So my position is that if one of those barges, two of those barges, whatever it may be, even breaks loose in the course of a storm, there's a barge in Bessie Heights Marsh even still to this day. They couldn't get out. That's what we're concerned about. What would happen in case of a storm, a hull breach, anything could happen. A tanker fueling up. I think they fuel up tankers out there at the edge of the oxbow. What if those fuel lines broke loose? Those things like that, because it's going to funnel right into the marsh, and once it funnels into that marsh, it's just going to spread like wildfire. That's our concern. Well, the General Land Office is the one that would be involved in that, and the General Land Office also has, it's a 20-day time frame that a barge could be parked somewhere, and after that 20 days, that barge needs to be addressed and moved, taken care of. And to answer your question as to why they're not being addressed, that I couldn't speak to that.
Why hasn't the General Land Office done anything about it? We've heard that they have sent out a cease and desist letter saying that you've got 30 days to remove those barges, but yet nothing has been done about it. I think from what we've heard that there has been a notice in the application of the change of ownership, but that shouldn't have anything to do with the fact that those barges and that fleeting facility has been there for longer than 21 days. It's getting close to the better part of a year, and you're exactly right, and that question does need to be answered. Pursuant to the laws and rules, there are several codes that come into play here: the Texas Administrative Code, the Texas Natural Resources Code, chapters 33 and 51, I believe. And pursuant to those codes, the definition of a structure is not only the barges that are there for longer than 21 days, but the fleeting and mooring facility itself. So the spud barges themselves, if they're there for longer than 21 days, that makes it illegal. Yes, ma'am. Well, the evidence that the General Land Office took does show differently, that there actually has been significant damage to the marsh itself. And these were documented, as you'll see here, in June of this year. The illegal fleeting operation has gone on for a better part of a year. And what we're saying here is that you're right. Illegal parking of barges does need to be stopped. And this illegal fleeting facility that's going on here must be stopped. Well, the private landowner lease just isn't good enough, because these waters here are waters that are owned by the state of Texas for the benefit and use of all of its citizens. And to have an out-of-state company come in and illegally squat on our public waters and break our laws and just do whatever they want to do with it, they've got to leave. That's the point. In the long run, I think that the damage is going to be borne on all of our citizens. I mean, that's the risk that we're running here. Any potential leak, it goes all into these marshes here with the cuts and everything. So it's the significant damage that our public dollars have spent. We've spent so much money on this trying to restore it in the past, and shouldn't go down, even take the chance of having that happen in the future. Yes, ma'am. I'm not disagreeing with you here, but these waters here, and there's thousands and thousands of acres of these marsh waters that we owe it to ourselves to protect for generations to come. The problem is that it's still not permitted.
Well, the thing is to get it permitted.
Well, we understand that the private landowners have a substantial economic interest in it, which stand to make millions and millions of dollars on this lease. So we understand why they have an objective to have Savage there, but the point is to protect the marsh for the benefit and use of all of our citizens. These marsh waters here are some of the most pristine waters for fishing and hunting that you can imagine. It is a go-to spot, and not only for the community and the citizens of Southeast Texas, but people come from many states and many areas to come in and fish our waters. With all due respect, ma'am, I don't believe that Savage is there to protect your land. I think it's there to make a lot of money. You have a good point there. But the problem is that if a leak or something, a spill were to happen in the river itself, as opposed to the oxbow, the river itself tends to flow downstream. However, these are tidally influenced waters. So the high tide goes up and fills all this stuff. Low tide comes back down. So it spreads it everywhere. And we just can't take the risk of having the spread due to the tides, which we can't control, of a leak here in the oxbow just because of the proximity to the marsh.
Great question, Mr. Trunkali. I appreciate you asking that. Yes, they matter to us. Yes, that business matters to us. Yes, it's true that from typically the site of a business in a 10 to 15 mile radius is where the largest amount of your proceeds are going to be spent in that local economy through those machine shops, those repair shops, those vendors, those suppliers, those things. As I said before, we're not opposed to business at all. We're not opposed to those individuals coming in, but few of the questions would be, if they're talking about bringing in 86 jobs, how are they operating today, and where are those individuals today? I mean, I'm not opposed to any of those things. My suggestion prior to this meeting was there's an oxbow immediately north up the river from the one they're in currently. That was my suggestion, to move into that oxbow up north. And from the conversations I had, apparently the cost-benefit analysis for the company was a little bit outside their operating cost. That's an assumption on my part. I wouldn't know, because they were talking about the possibility of having to dredge that facility to work out some of those things. My point is exactly that. If you can move to a safer site that does not have a nexus or any type of connection to the Bessie Heights Marsh, I much prefer that. We're all business, and those individuals matter to me. Yes, they do, but for that $133,000 a year that be coming into Orange County's general fund somewhere, for that $20 million, the cost-benefit analysis is pretty staggering. If you cross all the T's and dot all the I's, sir, yes, sir, but I'm still going to go back to that again. I'm highly concerned about the Bessie Heights Marsh. That is a significant investment and a protection system and a mechanism to help protect the rivers and the flooding environment when that does happen. We want to watch those things. So I understand what they're trying to do, and it just the dollar amount involved versus the moving into the oxbow or the oxbow that they're currently operating in right now versus having to move to the northern oxbow, there would probably be a significant investment in their capital to get and prepare that site. But if it doesn't have that effect into that Bessie Heights Marsh, and like I said, I'm not saying it's a probability of a leak, I'm saying it's a possibility. And Savage even acknowledges there's a possibility of a leak somewhere. If it's safer up there, I still say we go north. But from what I understand, that problem does exist. Those sludge barges have to be reset from time to time because of that. The tidal flow of the ship's passing and it's moving and creating that hydraulic effect that they do break those barges loose. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be around for a while too, so if anybody needs to ask any questions.